Welcome to the Airiam Podcast. This podcast covers topics related to cyber and human resilience. Content is geared towards business owners, CEOs, really for small and medium-sized companies, as well as IT and cybersecurity leaders. My name is Art Ocain. I'm the field CISO at Airiam. Our episode today will recap our previous webinar with ThreatLocker in October. For those of you who haven't caught it yet, check out our recording on YouTube or our website. Joining me today is Danny Jenkins from ThreatLocker. How are you, Danny?
Good morning, Art. Thank you for having me today. I'm great.
Awesome. So we ask this of everybody who joins one of our podcasts. How do you start your day?
Well, it really depends how I ended the last one. Normally, I get up in the morning. The first thing I do, unfortunately, is look at my phone, although I try to make it productive. I try and look at what security things have happened in the news, because there's nothing worse than being caught out saying, did you hear about this vulnerability or this breach? And I try and determine, is there any kind of real substance behind them? So if there's a latest vulnerability, I'll often go out and have it researched before I even get into the office. Outside of that, I get up. Sometimes I'll work out. Sometimes I go ice skating, and sometimes I just drag myself into the office.
Ice skating, that's awesome. That's awesome that you're able to find ice skating in Orlando. Are there a lot of options there?
Surprisingly, Florida has more ice rinks than a lot of states, and there's actually one directly across from our office, which works out well.
Awesome. Now, I know when ThreatLocker started, you probably started your day with hearing support alerts from the speakers in your house. Are you able to talk about that for a few seconds before we launch into recap?
Yeah, so when ThreatLocker started, it was just three of us, and one of our first clients was a hospital, and they required in their contract 24-hour support. And if anyone's ever started a business before, it's like you'll do anything to get that order, especially at the very beginning. So we're like, yeah, we offer 24-hour support. And what we did is we, first of all, we had it ping our phone. So we had a live chat set up, and we had it ping our phone. So it'd say new visitor in the queue, but Apple notifications weren't too good. So what we did is we installed ceiling speakers throughout the entire house. And no one was coming in at 2 a.m. very often. At the beginning, no one was coming in at 2 a.m. So we had ceiling speakers throughout the house. And what would happen is if we connected a computer to them, if someone came in, it would say new visitor in the queue, and it would echo through the entire house. And at the beginning, it was like one every 3 months or 3 weeks. And then it became 3 days. And then it became every night, 3 times a night. Someone would come in the middle of the night saying, hey, I need help with this. And I'd wake up and I'd deal with it. And eventually, ThreatLocker managed to get a full 24-hour operation center. And I don't have to worry about it now. But those ceiling speakers are still connected. So if they don't answer, they go through to my house. And that hasn't happened in years.
I think that's a wonderful story. And it speaks to really ThreatLocker's culture of urgency and addressing people's problems quickly. And I'm glad that you have a support team now so that you can actually sleep through the night. As far as our webinar, when we had done, you had done an amazing demo using Rubber Ducky to really demonstrate that, how effective ThreatLocker is and how really ineffective other products are at like EDR at stopping threats like that. And we talked about on incident response how we can use ThreatLocker to contain those threats. And, in an active incident response, we can deploy ThreatLocker. Ideally, it's there beforehand to keep the incident from happening. But even when an incident is happening, activating ThreatLocker allows us to really stop an incident dead in its tracks. And I realize that some of your partners are really getting a hold of this and really understanding that ThreatLocker is, a viable technology to use in incident response. And in fact, at a recent conference where I was there with Chase Cunningham, Dr. Zero Trust, I was discussing it with him how, it's part of our IR stack now, and how it's an effective IR tool. And I know that you have Zero Trust World coming up, and it's probably something to discuss there as well. Which is an event that we have to talk about sometime during this podcast here, and so you can kind of tell the world about the Zero Trust World. But as far as the rubber ducky thing, I see that you've been doing several events with that. Has it been blowing everybody's mind, really, what ThreatLocker is able to do in that kind of demo lately?
Yeah, we actually, there's quite a few stories surrounding this, and the amount of CISOs you'd be surprised that are actually willing to plug in the rubber ducky into their own computer because they have this false sense of security that it's just not going to steal their data. And I can promise it pretty much always steals their data. Now and again, we get blocked because they've got some weird program that has a serial number of known rubber duckies, and we have to go and switch the serial number out. But most of the time, it just steals their data, uploads it to our Google Cloud. And we've actually got quite a few big deals from this, like big international companies, banks, finance companies that challenged us at an event to plug it into their computer, and I say lost their data. We obviously deleted their data, but they had their data exfilled from their computer.
And that's probably terrifying to those CISOs. So they're probably ready to do a POC of ThreatLocker right away afterwards. As far as rubber duckies, for those of you who are joining this and didn't catch our webinar, what rubber ducky is it's a hardware device that acts like, the computer thinks it's like a keyboard. And so it doesn't recognize it as storage, so it doesn't get blocked by those policies that are blocking USB storage. And since it's recognizing it as a keyboard, it usually just allows it to exist. And so then it can activate scripts, steal your data, et cetera, even allow remote access to your machine, depending on the device. So there are, a lot of physical security things that people have done over the years to try to mitigate this. Like I've run around with a silicone caulk gun before and hit ports in a manufacturing environment to make sure nobody plugs in a USB device. But that's ridiculous because ultimately the keyboard and mouse are still USB devices, and they can unplug one and put an inline rubber ducky in. So ThreatLocker allows us to do that kind of protection by natively stopping scripts from running. And Danny, can you kind of explain the technology that's kind of ThreatLocker is using, the ring fencing, the whitelisting, to those who aren't familiar with ThreatLocker?
And the rubber ducky essentially is a keyboard. So if a user can do something bad using the tools on their computer, then the keyboard can do something bad, because essentially it's a pre-programmed keyboard. And they have this OMG cable as well, which is a little bit cooler than a rubber ducky because it allows you to deliver multiple of scripts at different times throughout the day. So you don't have to deliver on impact. You deliver 2 hours later from a Wi-Fi antenna. And that looks exactly like an iPhone cable. But the way it works is it sends keystrokes. And so if a user is able to do something, it can do something. So what we want to do is, first of all, we want to say, well, if a user is able to download bad software and run it, the rubber ducky is. How do we stop that? Well, we stop software running that isn't trusted by the business. So if the rubber ducky was pre-programmed to, say, download TeamViewer or a remote access tool or a reverse shell, then it would block that from executing in the first place, which would stop that attacker getting a foothold onto your machine. The other area is the weaponization of existing tools, because you don't necessarily need to download software to exfil data. So we need to start looking at, well, what are the tools that you have that could be used to exfil data? Well, the most common ones are obviously PowerShell, but you've got curl, you've got run-DLL, you've got cscript. All of these can run commands or scripts in Windows that could iterate through your documents and upload them to the internet. So in addition to saying we want to block untrusted software, we want to limit what trusted software can do. Because what you'll find is you've got 500 different applications on your computer. All of those can do crazy stuff like upload your data to the internet, encrypt files. But if you just stop them seeing your files, like PowerShell doesn't need to see your network shares, it doesn't need to see your documents, you can actually stop them being weaponized against you.
And for those that aren't really familiar with really the risks that are in their organization of people, installing something that shouldn't be allowed, running a script that shouldn't be run, etc. There's a couple technologies that are involved in ThreatLocker that we like to deploy when we're doing a ThreatLocker deployment. There's, and whitelisting is one of them. And so ThreatLocker goes into a learning mode to learn what's kind of normal in the environment, and then we audit that list and kind of determine what we want to allow to run in that environment. And that allows us to really lock down your corporate environment to keep that malicious stuff from running and keep people from running those things that may not be malicious, but they're tools that can be used maliciously from operating under those in those people's workstations. Now, when we're using it in IR, we're putting it in complete blocking mode. So we're deploying it so that it blocks everything. Because when there's an active incident going on, we want to make sure that ransomware, other attacks, are stopped dead in their tracks. So we're not really taking any time to audit your network at that point. But it's best to get this in before an incident happens. That way we're able to really control what's able to run and have it properly secured. Danny, as far as incident response, other than just, whitelisting, can you explain how the ring fencing feature kind of works and would assist in kind of stopping things from accessing things they shouldn't in an incident response?
So when you deal with a cyber attack, and there's lots of different ways these attacks happen, the obvious way is you come in and all of your files have been encrypted and now you're in trouble. But quite often what happens is you don't come in and all of your files haven't been encrypted. Some of your files have been encrypted, or you see egress alarms with loads of data coming out of your organization. And now I'm in the middle of a cyber attack and I have two choices. And you don't know necessarily how bad that attack is. So when I've gone into companies, they say we're being attacked. And I've gone into companies, by the way, that said we're being attacked, and they're not really being attacked. They've just got one piece of malware on their machine in one place, and they don't know the damage. They don't know what's happening. So the sensible response, if you don't know what's happening, is to shut the whole thing down, because if the alternative is all your data gets exfilled. But that's obviously not great for business, because if your whole business gets shut down, you now can't function. So the attack has been successful, even if it's not been successful. So the alternative is what you do is you go and you say, okay, we need to be really, really proactive here. We need to ring the alarm bells, set the fire alarms off, and make sure everyone knows what's happening. But we can't afford to shut down a hospital. We can't afford to shut down a car dealership or a manufacturing plant over this. So what you can do is you can go in, you can deploy ThreatLocker, and you deploy ThreatLocker on one of your clean machines, and within a few minutes, within 10, 15 minutes, worst case scenario, it tells you everything you need on that machine. And then you deploy ThreatLocker on all of your machines, and you say, block everything else that wasn't learned on this clean machine. And what you have there is you have a really, really controlled environment very, very quickly. Now, inevitably, there's going to be things that were on the other machines that you didn't know needed to run. And then you start making those exceptions. So a user calls you up and says, hey, my printer stopped working, or hey, I use this application and I can't use it anymore. And I say call you up, they can actually request it. They'll get a pop-up and they can hit request. And then you can start allowing those exceptions very, very quickly within a minute. Now, the nice thing about this is your environment is now locked down. Nothing new can run. But also, if you've got tools like PowerShell, Run DLL, Cscript, they can't go out to the internet. They can't exfil data. They can't see your files. They can't encrypt files. So you're really now in control. And you can start seeing everything in the logs. And there's going to be a lot of data in those logs. You can start seeing everything that's being denied. And you can start saying, do I want this to be denied? Do I want to make an exception? Now, what's cool about this is whether you're a ThreatLocker client today or not, if you get hit by ransomware or you get hit by a cyber attack tomorrow, you can call your MSP, you can call ThreatLocker, and you can say, let's deploy this. And ThreatLocker will put their cyber hero team on that immediately, 24 hours a day. They will start looking through your logs. They'll start helping you get that secured. And they'll start saying, well, let's allow this, allow this, allow this. And we can cross-reference it against our database of, is this a known good app? Where does it need to talk to? What country was it developed in? And we can start helping you get control of your environment really quickly. And quite often that turns into, okay, we got a little bit of a cyber attack. Someone got a foothold on a few machines. We encrypted a few files on a file server. It's done. And it's not turned into a massive business-ending attack. Now, if you wait too long, eventually it turns into a mass business-ending attack. But because you're in secured mode, you're in control of what happens, so no one else is running, and we can just kill all other processes in your environment.
And what this really is minimizing business interruption and the impact to the business, allowing you to get back up and running and recover faster, which is really kind of our focus at Airiam as far as recovery and resilience, is minimizing that interruption so that you're able to do business. And what Danny really said as far as the response time that the cyber heroes give, I think that is really something that is groundbreaking and is new to the industry, because most IR companies, have an SLA on even in their retainer customers of like 6 hours for a remote response time, 24 hours for on-site, things like that. The fact that you can call Danny or, call ThreatLocker and have the cyber heroes, help you start deploying this tool right away, that is, that's unheard of as far as incident response. And that's really a differentiator there.
Yeah, our average response time is 23 seconds. So if you go on to portal.threatlocker.com and you click get help from a cyber hero, 23 seconds is our average response time. I think less than 1% of our calls go over 60 seconds. And the first thing they offer you is a Zoom session. So they can jump on Zoom and they can start getting real data and real questions really, really fast. They'll get you deployment scripts. They'll get you anything you need. And it doesn't matter if you're not paying us at this point. It's like, okay, let's just get the agent out there. Let's get your problem solved. And then we can talk about, are you a ThreatLocker partner or not? And if you decide, hey, I deployed the agent and they stopped my malware and they help me out and I don't want to buy ThreatLocker, then that's okay too. I mean, it's not going to help you in future attacks, but it's okay too. Our goal is to get you secured, and we do that a lot. And the response time, for me, 23 seconds is too long, but apparently that's the fastest I can get people to answer.
Danny, to me, that is alone a market differentiator from the rest of IR out there. It is, it seems like everyone out there, even when we're trying to, when you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for a retainer with a name brand IR company, it's hard to get a response. And then it's a slow response at first. And, usually that devastation's already done to your organization by the time anyone actually gets involved. And, so I think that partnering with ThreatLocker on incident response is a no-brainer. Obviously, I want to encourage everybody that's listening to this podcast to, get ThreatLocker beforehand. And if you want a POC or reach out to Airiam, we will get you started and we'll get, ThreatLocker rolled out to your organization, because this is, one of those controls that will stop this from being the worst day of your life. And, it will make a big difference. Now, right now, when insurance companies give you that questionnaire, they're asking you, do you have MFA? Do you have, immutable backups? Do you have an MDR provider, or do you have EDR on your organization? And only some forms are saying, do you have a whitelisting control? But I think as we go on, people are going to see increased value and start to realize that this is the control that's going to make the difference in those incidents and in preventing those incidents. And cyber insurance companies are going to start to realize this is going to keep us from paying ransoms if we encourage our insured to get this out to their networks. So, to me, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
I think, Art, as well, you guys have done a really good job at changing the way people think about incident response, because the historic way was very much you bring an incident response company in and their first priority was collecting the evidence. And that's important because you want to know what happened. You want someone to be prosecuted by it. Reality check, they're not going to get prosecuted. They're probably sitting in Russia and nothing's ever going to happen to them. I mean, we saw the guys get arrested for the Kaseya breach in Russia. Do you think they were ever extradited to the US? No, I doubt. I haven't checked that, so I'm not bad. But I highly doubt that they're sending, they're keeping Edward Snowden and they're sending over some low-level cyber criminals as far as they're concerned. And they're not going to extradite them to the US from Russia. But the most incident response firms are actually focusing on recovery and evidence and finding the guy who did it. Whereas what they should be focusing on is getting you back up and running. It's kind of like saying, hey, I've got an ambulance here. I just saw a bunch of thugs throw paint over the ambulance and there's an emergency call coming in. The ambulance driver saying, well, I'm going to chase the thugs instead of getting the paint off the windshield and going on and deal with it. And you guys obviously take a different approach to incident response. And I know you collect evidence as well, but it's very much about let's get out there, let's get the customer up and running, and then let's get the evidence to do whatever prosecution so the FBI can get their pat on the back and they've identified the criminal who did this.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to that real quickly. Usually we, in the normal incident response process, there's identifying and kind of forensics before the recovery phase, we do them in parallel. So we start recovering in a containment environment. So we'll deploy ThreatLocker to protect those machines so that they are contained while we are collecting forensic information. So we're not waiting for, this forensic assessment to happen before we get your company up and running. We're well in process of getting your organization up and running. And the earlier we catch this, ideally before the incident, but the earlier in the incident we catch this, the smaller the impact your organization is going to be. So we're able to get you up and running, keep that evidence. We'll just keep those logs and that evidence for that forensic analysis, but we can get you up and running in the meantime. So Danny, before we kind of wrap, I would love if you could talk about really kind of Zero Trust World that's coming up here in, I believe it's February, and why it's important.
Okay, so Zero Trust World, it's a 3-day conference, cybersecurity conference here in Orlando, Florida. The best time to come to Orlando, Florida is February because it's a nice 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius if you're from Canada or across the pond. We spend 3 days really trying to help IT professionals become more aware of the threats, more aware of the dangers, and also how to defend against them. But we also do a lot of cool hands-on stuff. So we have labs where you've got 200 laptops in a room, we've got a bunch of instructors, and we're going to give everyone a rubber ducky. We're going to go, let's program a rubber ducky to steal some data. Let's program a rubber ducky to create a reverse shell. And we're going to run these labs. We're going to show people how to do it. We have people on the floor helping people. Then we're going to run Metasploit labs, and we're going to run training sessions as well. So how do you harden Windows Server? How do you harden your Macs? How do you harden Office 365? It's not just about the stuff that ThreatLocker touches, but all of the other stuff as well. It's really, 3 days, hands-on training. Of course, it's a cybersecurity event, so there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. We've got some cool speakers coming in. So we've got Mark Rober, the NASA engineer who made the glitter bombs and actually took down a cybercriminal ring, coming in to talk. We've got the people hacker, I can't remember her name now. We've got some great speakers. We've got great after party, Jurassic World after party as well. So that's going to be great with some Jeeps and some cool stuff going on there. And it's going to be a great 3 days. But really, the key point of it is you come in, you learn a lot, and you go out smarter, more aware of the risks, more aware of what you're defending against, and putting yourself in a hacker's shoes as well as a defender's shoes.
Awesome. So those of you who are listening that are, business owners, and you have an internal IT team or a cybersecurity team, you might want to send somebody from your team to Zero Trust World to pick up some new skills, in addition to seeing ThreatLocker in action. And again, if anybody needs a POC, reach out. But I'm looking forward to Zero Trust World. Danny, do you have anything to add before we wrap?
No, I think, it's been great working with you and your team. You guys are a great company for incident response, and I appreciate using ThreatLocker's tools in that. I think it's shown the value of ThreatLocker. And, hopefully if anyone has hopefully nobody has any incident response requirements, but if you do, reach out to Art and his team, reach out to ThreatLocker if you need to get agents deployed really fast. We are here 24 hours a day to help you with those incident response needs. But also, if you're not sure of the risks in your environment, you start a trial with ThreatLocker, speak to Art, speak to their team, start a trial with ThreatLocker, and they will show you how, what risks are in your environment that you didn't think about. Maybe it's something as simple as a coupon clipper that can see the passwords of all the websites you go to. They can help you identify that. They can help you identify potential risks or threats before they become incidents to respond to.
Exactly. And thanks for that. So everybody, thank you for your time today. It's a great discussion. I love ThreatLocker, and Danny is always amazing in every event that he speaks at. Please subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. New episodes are typically coming out every Wednesday. And for more information on Airiam, visit www.airiam.com.
Okay. Thank you, Art.